there is a stigma against, on men for showing emotion and being vulnerable.
Especially going through like grade school and stuff. If you were a boy or a young man or whatever, and you had like emotional issues, you were kind of made fun of and looked at like a little wimp.
Right. You have a unique perspective as well because, you're raising two boys.
The biggest thing with me and my boys is like, you know, just make sure that they have like the open resources and people that they can talk to.
Do you feel like that was missing when you were younger? Because I feel like I
Oh yeah,
said, I was the
absolutely.
only boy. I felt like I was kind of doing my own thing. And I just wanted to ask you, a question, man, and really have a honest conversation about men and emotions, man. So recently, I watched the Tyrese Gibson episode of The Breakfast Club. Did you see anything about that?
No, I did not see that.
So the whole thing was basically he went on there and he was talking about his new album and all this stuff, and Charlemagne the God on the Breakfast Club says, "Hey man, I know you lost, some people. Not only the divorce, but he's like you lost your mother. Your mother passed away. You lost both of your sisters. You who else? He had a couple friends, like famous friends, John Singleton, and remember Paul Walker from Fast
Yeah,
and Furious.
yeah.
He died, and so he actually breaks down on camera and begins to cry.
Okay.
And Charlemagne got up and like gave him a hug and offered him some tissues. And there's like this moment where he like throws the tissues up in the air. It was actually pretty funny, but at the same time, it was a serious moment, man. It was actually, even for me, it was kind of a tearjerker. You know what I'm saying? I ain't
Uh,
cry, but I was like, ooh,
you almost
I
cried.
almost got it. Got me. It got me a little. I was like, wow, this is a moment. This is very, he was being very vulnerable in the moment, and like it was actually a really dope episode. So anyway, he
I'll
says,
check that out. I didn't even know anything about that.
yeah, check it out when you get a chance. And one of the things he says, he's like, he says black men cry. That's what he says. But what he was saying was that men should cry, and he was saying that men don't. He was like, when men are going through divorce, he's like, everyone checks on the woman, but nobody checks on the man. Men are
Right.
going through loss too. He's like, when the women go through a miscarriage, men have like, that's a loss for a man too.
Right.
And he said when you can't put food on the table because your career is going up like this and then down. He's like, you no one checks on the man. So, and he was crying,
I agree with that.
and yeah, and he was like, I'm a man, I'm a grown man, and yeah, I'm crying, and he was like, we need that. And so anyway, I wrote a whole blog about it and was talking about all that stuff. And my whole thing was there is a stigma against, on men for showing emotion and being vulnerable. And like, so I was going to ask you, what was your experience growing up about like showing emotion and like, you know what I mean? Like, as far as being emotional and being able to be vulnerable and crying and things like that. Like, what's your perspective on this?
Hmm. My perspective. Well, I remember growing up and especially going through like grade school and stuff. If you were a boy or a young man or whatever, and you had like emotional issues, you were kind of made fun of and looked at like a little wimp.
Right.
You know, that's how it's always been like handed out. But at the same time, I've been told numerous times in my life uh, that I'm very emotional for a man.
Mm-hmm.
I've been told that numerous times. But as far as showing your emotions, I mean, you have to.
Mm-hmm.
You can't keep it all, just bottled up inside of you, because then you're just gonna be miserable.
Right. I dealt with the same thing, especially, I was one of the only boys in my family,
Right.
so there was always a talk of like, you're a man or you're a boy, you should behave like this, and especially like you said, once you get outside, you start going around like, in school, stuff like that. There's like a pressure there to be a certain type of way. But what I realized that if you're not dealing with your emotions properly, most of us men, because we're not, like they tell us, you know, don't cry. You're like, boys aren't supposed to cry, or they might say something like, crying doesn't solve anything or anything like that. So what I notice is that a lot of times it comes out as aggression or anger. And I think I dealt with that. Like, I was an angry ass kid. You know what I mean? Especially going into like teenage years. I didn't understand how to deal
Like
with
you
it.
get so mad that you start crying.
Nah, not necessarily. I mean, like, I didn't understand how to express my emotions. And so I felt it inside of me. And when I went outside and I acted out on it because I was misunderstood.
Absolutely.
And I was angry.
Misunderstood.
Right. Maybe not even really understanding that I probably had some type of trauma or something going on from the past, and I don't know how to deal with it. I'm told I can't cry, so I'm just outside, just doing stupid stuff.
Right.
Could you
Taking
relate?
it out with anger, fighting, carrying on.
Right. I heard someone say that recently. They were saying about how, like, a lot of these people out here, like a lot of these men out here, they act like they're really hard, they're tough, and a lot of times they're not tough, they're just emotional.
I can see that.
Not knowing how to deal with their shit, and they go out and they want to go fight people and all that stuff. So that really kind of rang true with me. But, so yeah. Also, I know you've also had some grief in your life. You know what I'm saying, with some people that are close to you. You know what I mean. And how are you able to deal with all that stuff? And did you find yourself being how did you deal with your stuff?
As far as like, you mean like a death or something?
Yeah, did you have any stigmas on you as far as whether it be crying, or did you just go see a therapist? Like, how do you deal with your emotions now as an adult and dealing with mental health?
Now as an adult, usually if I have any type of issues or anything with another person, I usually try to have a conversation with that person.
Mm-hmm.
And try to work out whatever issue there is, whatever took place, whatever happened, try to work that out and not just keep everything inside. There was a lot of times when I was younger and I'd get mad at something, or somebody something did would hurt me or bother me or whatever. I would just kind of keep it inside of me and not say nothing. And then, kind of like what you said, I let it out in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely let it out in other ways. But now, as a grown, 30 years old now, as a grown man, I think it's part of life. You kind of learn how to deal with that stuff at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta deal with those types of things in healthy ways. You're not gonna be looked at as like, a little bitch or anything. Try to talk to somebody or express to someone how you're feeling, or you get a little emotional or upset or you cry or whatever, it is what it is. Because I promise you, at the end of all of it, regardless if you cry through it or whatever, you're gonna be all right.
Right.
You're probably gonna feel better,
Mm-hmm.
Even if it didn't go the way you wanted to, especially with like a personal conflict, it's definitely better to, you're gonna feel better that you tried to resolve the issue than just leave it inside and keep all the anger and move forward with the anger inside of you.
I agree. Have you had any stigmas yourself around crying? You know, some men, you know, they will go to their grave without crying. You know what I'm saying? Like that, they would rather be guarded. How do you deal with that? Like, are you okay with just, you know, when you need to let it out, letting it out?
Yeah, I've never really been like a big person to like cry in front of other people, but there's been times, you know, I just let it out, regardless if I be in a car, driving somewhere, just alone or whatever. And to be honest with you, man, sometimes as you sit there and you just release some of those emotions inside of you, I usually feel better.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, for sure.
it might not necessarily solve all the issues or whatever problems that I'm having at the time. It might not solve those problems, but sometimes it just feels better to release some of that, and then you just kind of regroup yourself and you're like, all right, everything's all right. It's gonna be all right.
Yeah. Now that's you got it. You have a unique perspective as well because you know you're raising two boys,
Yeah.
right? How are you handling them, like in their emotions right now? You know, knowing what you know now about how you were handling your emotions when you were younger to how you handle the difference between how you handled it then when you were a child and handling it now. How are you mitigating that with your children, with your boys?
Well, let's be honest here. We can't make our kids do anything,
Right,
right?
right,
You
right.
know, or all we can do is try to give them the knowledge, you know, of what we've experienced in our lives and what we've learned in our lives. That's really all we can do is give them the knowledge. So, like, the biggest thing with me and my boys is like, you know, just make sure that they have like the open resources of people that they can talk to.
Right. That's
You know,
that's
like
really
no
good.
matter what the problem is, like no matter what you did, you know, whatever, like you're never gonna come to me about an issue or something that you did or something that's bothering you, and I'm not gonna get mad. I'm never gonna get mad at you about
Right, right,
it. You know, and I feel like that's where I made some mistakes in the past, and I feel like that's where a lot of parents make mistakes today. Is they jump to like that, you know, I don't even know how to really put it, but it's almost like they just start jumping down your throat about it. Like if you say something negative or something, you know, that you did or that somebody did or whatever that like your parents wouldn't agree with, a lot of parents are like automatically like angry at their child about that and start like yelling at them. It's like, oh, what I tell you, you know, blah, 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 and this and that. And I think that's the biggest piece to all of it is just make sure you got some, you know, good open doors and resources for especially the children and my children that they can talk to and, you know, get some advice from somebody that's been through some shit in their life.
right, right. For sure.
You know, and let them know that it's okay to talk to people, you know, let them know that it's okay to talk to people about your problems. Like, I told both my sons recently, like, look, excuse me, you got guidance counselors in these schools. Like, first of all, you should never feel like you can't come to me about anything. But if all else, like I made sure that when I took Jace for his walk through the school and everything, I made sure I told him that. I made sure I pointed out like where the guidance counselor's office was and stuff too. Like, look, you got some issues with some other kids, or something's going on with you, and you want to go talk to somebody, like you can go talk to her as well.
Right, right. So just trying to really equip them with the tools to be
Yeah,
able to
that's all
get
you
through.
can do, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
If they don't want to listen, like you know, at the end of the day, if they want to do the exact opposite, you know, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. But I just try to make sure I do my job to let them know that hey, there's a lot of people out here that can help you, and you can always come to me for anything that you do need.
Do you feel like that was missing when you were younger? Because I feel like I
Oh yeah,
said, I was the
absolutely.
only boy really in my family. Like I had a whole bunch. I had my sister. I got my mother, my aunts. I had a whole bunch of female cousins. I had one male cousin, and he was 5 years older than me. So you figure I was ripping and running. Kind of, I felt like I was kind of doing my own thing, you know. And I
Yeah,
felt like there was
it's like
no
it's
men
one
in
of
it.
those situations where you feel like, especially me, you know, and I'm sure you in your situation as well, is like there's no man there trying to teach you how to be a man,
Right,
you know. So like, we had to figure that shit out on our own. And like, don't get me wrong, I've made a million mistakes, but to answer that question, if I had somebody in my life back then, like as a male figure or, man figure in their life, father figure, whatever you want to call it, that I could have went to like that or gave me some guidance through life, it might have helped my situation out a lot better.
Right, I agree.
And we didn't have that, but you know what? It's okay because we just had to teach ourselves how to be men. Because there was nobody out here trying to guide us in a good path, and we took some bad paths or whatever, but
we still got here, right? We got to the same destination. For sure, yeah, man. Okay. It's a fact, But it does, and unfortunately, we had to go through all the mistakes in order to get to this point where we are.
You had to learn all the hard lessons.
Yeah, and
and that's where you can try to teach the youth, by taking those wrong paths and making those wrong decisions and learning the lessons the hard way. That's my biggest thing with my sons is like, look, I learned a lot of things the hard way. So I'm going to try to lead both of you down a path where you don't have to see half the shit that I've seen or go through half the shit that I've went through,
That's right.
And that's how, that's my job at the end of the day is to try to direct them in a better place than what I did. Because, like you, I was raised by, I had my mom and my grandma. I had my brother. He was older than me. He was like 6-7 years older than me. And, me and him never really had like a real close relationship. And, so I had 2 women raising me. And then after my grandmother passed, and it was just my mom, that's when things really went downhill because I didn't have, I had my mom, but my mom was working her ass off trying to keep the bills paid and the food on the table for me and my brother.
Right. That's a story that a lot of people have, for sure. Yeah. My mother was doing the same thing.
I don't blame her, necessarily because, she was trying to do what she had to do as a single mother at that point. It was just her. But it was definitely at the years of my life that I feel like I needed that support system more than ever.
Right.
Like those those early teen years, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, like right in there. That's really when you need that shit the most.
That's a fact. Yeah, so that's why I created my blog, and that's why I'm doing these videos, is for that reason, man. It's like I've been through a lot. I know a lot of people who've been through a lot, and I feel like there's not enough people trying to have real conversations, surrounding some of these things that we all go through. You know what I'm saying? Real people going through real things. And
at the end of the day, for some reason earlier there was the topic of conversation was suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And what leads people to that and everything else. And, it's one of those things where, I told the kids earlier, look, I don't want to hear y'all talk about it, because at the end of the day, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter what you're dealing with, at the end of the day, there ain't nothing worth taking your life for.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing at all. I've been there at parts of my life too, but you know what? As the years went on, I learned how to deal with things. That is absolutely the last answer.
That's a fact. I agree, man. It's a beautiful world, and I tell people that the hell that they're living through is usually between their ears, and it's a perspective thing, and a lot of times it could be helped, like whatever people might be going through.
Absolutely.
And I even put it on here in my blog. Not all of us are complicit in our hurting, but let us all try harder to be intentional in our healing. So I think that you're doing a great job. You know what I'm saying? We've known each other for a long time, and I've watched you grow, and I've watched you raise your children, your sons, and that's amazing, man, that you're instilling some good men, some male values into your boys, man. So that's great. I appreciate. What'd you say?
I said absolutely. Thank you.
Oh yes, sir. And I appreciate you getting on the call with me. I'm gonna probably take a look at this and chop this all up and edit this up, man. But we're gonna get back on the call at some point. and do this again on other topics if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm down.
All right, bet, man. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. Hey,
All
hold on.